Welcome in to the Barnes on Bama podcast. I'm your host, Owen Barnes, and we've got some things to discuss. Alabama basketball had its first exhibition on Friday night, and then the Alabama football team played what some might call a football game. I don't know if I would, on Saturday. So we're going to talk about both of those in this episode. We're going to start with basketball, get the good news out of the way first before we dive into the debacle that was Saturday. So first things first is basketball season. Especially after what happened Saturday night, it's basketball season, and Nate Oates' team has given us a lot to be proud of and a lot to look forward to this season. We talked about this exhibition for Wake Forest. We had also talked about how Alabama had lost the last couple of years worth of exhibitions. And I know Wake Forest's coach even made a comment like Wake Forest blew us out and then we made the Final Four. So even if they lost this game, he wasn't super concerned from Wake Forest's standpoint. And that's something we were also telling our fan base is, hey, be on the lookout. Like, even if Alabama loses this game, it's completely okay. Alabama has not done very well in these over the past couple of years, but they've been completely fine, making the Sweet 16 or even the Final Four in some of these instances where they were not as good in these exhibition games. So just to kind of, hold out, let's see what happens. Also, there was an additional player that was not going to be playing in this game. I know when we talked about it last week, we mentioned that Aiden Sherrill, Chris Youngblood, and Latrell Wrightsell were all going to be missing from this game. There was an additional player missing in Grant Nelson. He has an abdominal injury. They say he's week to week. Probably not going to play against Memphis. Again, probably going to be ready by that first game of the season. But so with that being said, you're missing 3 potential starters in Chris Youngblood, Latrell Wrightsell, and Grant Nelson. So, tempering expectations coming into this game against Wake Forest, who was definitely much more at full strength and is going to be a very good team in the ACC this year. But Alabama basketball gives us a lot to be excited about. We saw some slow starts, out of Aiden Holloway. He went 1 for 3 from free throw lines, and all of a sudden Twitter erupts, and all the Auburn fans are like, "Oh, we told you he was terrible. We told you he couldn't shoot." Aiden finishes with 20 points on 5 of 12 shooting from 3. He has 6 assists on no turnovers, and really looked in complete control. He looked much better off the catch than he did off the bounce from a three-point shooting perspective. He definitely feels like somebody that spot up is going to be really, really good, similar to like a Latrell Wrightsell, that if he catches an open shot, you're not expecting him to miss it much at all. And that's definitely something that, as we've seen in Nate Oates' offense, really gets this offense going. When you have somebody that you can kick to an open shot and you're very confident they're going to make it, it just spreads out the defense. And when it spreads out that defense, it allows your guards to work in space. The other person that a lot of people are really expecting, big things out of and have heard a lot out of fall camp and out of camp so far has been LeBaron Philon. Philon ends up going 13, 5, and 5. His 5 assists was on, again, just 1 turnover. Shot 3 of 6 from deep. Looked pretty good, right? Not saying he was an absolute world beater out there, but LeBaron looked completely in control, looked like he knew where he wanted to go with the basketball, looked very comfortable and confident, in his shot and in who he is. Then you have Cliff, right? Big Cliff Amore. We've talked about him all offseason as he's kind of the key addition to this team. He is what allows Alabama to, have the rim protection that they've been missing the last couple of years, him as well as Aiden Sherrill. But Cliff, obviously a bigger piece of that being the starter. And, you definitely saw that, right? You saw the defense was better in this game. Alabama did give up 77 points in the exhibition, but it was an 80-possession game, right? So Alabama gives up under 1 point per possession while scoring 98, right? You got to be pretty happy with that. I'm not saying the defense was absolutely elite by any standard, but it was pretty good, right? In comparison to what we've seen in over the course of last season, missing 3 starters, including some of your better defensive players like Chris Youngblood, I expect will be a very good defender for us this year. Grant Nelson, especially playing the 4, I think will be a very good defender for us this year. Latrell Wrightsell was very good at perimeter defense last season. These are some of your key defenders and key players that were missing, and the defense still was absolutely okay, right? Especially for a charity exhibition that's happening 2 weeks before the season even starts. This is not like we're in March Madness. The defense is not at that level, but the defense definitely looks markedly better than it did last season, right? We did have a little bit of a turnover issue. We ended up having 14 turnovers. Most of those came from either Darian Reed or Mark Sears. Obviously, you don't expect Mark Sears to have the 4 turnovers. Darian Reed really felt he was really, really good on defense. There were a few moments where he had some really big block shots, saved a ball in what was one of the greatest sequences that we could have expected out of Alabama basketball, where Nas Cunningham ends up missing a 3 on one end. Then we get down to the other end. Darian Reed blocks a shot, saves it from going out of bounds, throws it to Mark Sears, who does a throw up, alley-oop lob to Cliff Amore in, defense leading directly to offense, right? It kind of shows the potential of this team and what the defense, if it is as good as it can be, what it can lead to, right? And I think that's really kind of the goal of a Nate Oates team, is to play fast, but a lot of that is having the defense be able to create turnovers, and then those turnovers leading to fast breaks on offense, and those either being open, uncontested dunks or layups, or potential open threes by top shooters that just are unguarded, right? You definitely saw a little bit of a defensive intensity out of Mark Sears that you saw at times last year, but you didn't see every game. Mark got a steal and started like clapping and definitely was like super intense. And Nate mentioned it, right? There was something that he really sees. He sees the defensive intensity. He sees the players trying, obviously defending at the level that they're trying to be so that Alabama can have the defense he wants it to be, right? Because this offense, with the team that we have put together, this offense is going to be good. There's no doubt in my mind this offense is going to be really, really good. The number of 22, 23 threes that is the current SEC and Alabama record with 23 threes in a game, I fully expect will go down, right? Alabama went 19 of 46 in this game, and that is not including missing Grant Nelson, who can absolutely hit shots, Chris Youngblood, an over 40% three-point shooter, and Latrell Wrightsell, arguably one of the best shooters in the entire country. He was 4th in efficiency last season. Again, an over 40% three-point shooter, right? You're missing those 3 guys, and you still shot 19 of 46 in this exhibition, right? There are going to be games where Alabama is going to put up a lot of threes, right? They have the skill set to do it. They have the players to do it. And there's multiple guys on the floor that are able to put them up and able to make them at a high clip, right? So the offense will be good. The limiting factor of this team is how good is the defense, right? That's the reason you bring in Cliff Amore. It's the reason you bring in Chris Youngblood. It's the reason you convince Mark Sears and Grant Nelson to come back. The experience of these guys is huge, and that, them knowing, hey, this is what it takes to be a good defense is what it's going to take to be able to, reach the ceiling that this team has, because the offensive ceiling of this team is absolutely elite. They end up scoring 98 points. They end up, shooting 41.3% from 3, right? Over 40% from 3, you're going to be happy with all the time. They shot 73% from free throw, which isn't great, but not terrible at all. Again, that included Aiden Holloway missing a couple. You're not expecting your shooter that's that good to miss 2 very often. Darian Reed actually was really good from the stripe. Mark Sears, 5 of 6 from the stripe. Jaron Stevenson, only 2 of 4 from the stripe. So, you had some guys that are really better shooters than what they shot from the free throw line, right? This is a situation where Alabama is a very good team, and it's going to be just making sure that they get all the pieces put together. And again, you did not see all those pieces due to the injuries, right? You did not see all those pieces. And some of these are legitimate injuries. Some of these are precautionary style things. This is Nate Oates trying to make sure that he has all of his guys ready to go when it matters, right? He wants his guys ready to go for when the season actually starts. He wants his guys ready to go for once the more intense non-conference games come up. And then definitely when SEC starts, right? So this is a situation where I'm sure if there's any level of hey, I might be slightly injured, it's precautionary, right? This charity exhibition obviously is a great time for Alabama fans to see what the team is going to look like, but it's not the end of the world, right? If Grant Nelson doesn't play, it's completely okay. And you see Alabama win by 21 points, right? So an absolutely incredible showing for Alabama basketball. I will link the whole video. It was hosted on Hibbett Sports YouTube channel. The Next Round guys did a lot of commentary as well as Brian Pasnick. But I will link the video down in the description if you did not get a chance to see the game. It's still up in its entirety where it was live streamed. It was a really quality broadcast put on by Hibbett and the Night Needy guys. I really enjoyed watching it. It was something that I was impressed by the quality, right? I was very impressed by what kind of stream they put on and what kind of broadcast they put together for this charity exhibition. It was better done than some, ESPN Plus games, right? This was a very well done broadcast. I really liked what I saw out of it, and I thought that it was a really cool thing, obviously, to get in front of our fans in Bell Auditorium in Birmingham, have some fans, raise money for Children's Hospital, and just get this exhibition in front of people. The next exhibition is going to be next Saturday against Memphis, and that game is going to be up in Huntsville. That is also going to be streamed on YouTube from what I have heard. I will have more details on that I will put out in the next episode, so be on the lookout for that. But as I said, the Memphis exhibition will be the next exhibition before the first game of the season. Is going to be happening on November the 4th, and that's against UNC Asheville in Coleman Coliseum, right? I'll be at that game. I expect anybody that, wants to see this team in live action needs to be at that game, because this is going to be a special group. And, similar to what we said in Brandon Miller's team, right? If you have a chance to see this team, you are going to want to do it, because this is a very special Alabama roster. There's a reason why this is the highest preseason ranking Alabama has ever had. There's a reason why this team has expectations that no other Alabama team has had, and this is an elite roster, right? Alabama wins by 21 points against a good Wake Forest team, missing 3 starters, and all 4 guys that are out are going to be key contributors. And I haven't even mentioned Mohamoud Diabate, and I want to make sure I mention him before I end this kind of basketball segment, because Mo D, we talked when we were talking about rotations and talking about who's going to get minutes and who isn't. There was some discussion around where does Mohamoud Diabate fit in, and the answer is he's got to fit in, right? He is somebody that proves every time he's on the floor that he needs more minutes, right? And it's, even though his offense is not going to wow you, right? His offense is not going to be, Mark Sears. That's not what he is. But he makes winning plays when he's on the basketball court. Mohamoud Diabate played in 19 minutes in this game. He actually does hit a 3 in this game, which is something that we have not seen out of Mo D. He goes 1 for 2 from 3, 3 for 4 from the stripe. He has 5 total rebounds, including 3 offensive rebounds, making him second highest in offensive, or tied for most offensive rebounds on the entire team. He ended up drawing 4 fouls, 3 assists, has 2 steals, blocks a shot, right? Like, Mohamoud Diabate does everything blue collar, right? He is that guy, and he is going to, kind of force you to play him, right? So Mohamoud Diabate is somebody that I really just wanted to shout out, because we talked about it last season, but his offense was definitely lacking behind. We saw his willingness to drive to the basket, and he was much better finishing at the rim Friday night than he was last season. So that was a huge deal. And then the other thing was he hit a shot, right? I'm not saying Mohamoud Diabate needs to be a 40% three-point shooter, but if he's a 30% three-point shooter, where he at least makes you, if you're going to leave him wide open, he can hit one, that's a big deal, right? Because that's much better than what you had last season, where last season people wouldn't even have to come out to him because he was a 10% three-point shooter, right? If you can just have him hit some shots when he's wide open, that's absolutely massive. And then his ability still to drive to the basket, draw fouls, complete and ones, finish around the rim, that's huge, right? Absolutely massive. He can guard 1 through 5. He has that level of intensity and that level of defensive effort. So he is somebody that will be on the court, right? I don't want to say exactly how many minutes, because I'm sure it will be determined based on the game, right? But there will be games similar to that Grand Canyon game that we saw at the end of last season, where you need somebody that's just going to make a defensive play. And I can guarantee you Mohamoud Diabate will be on the court. Similar to Darion Reed, no matter what his offense looks like, right? And his offense currently is a little behind his defense. But no matter what his offense looks like, if he continues to make the blue collar and effort plays that we saw in that Wake Forest game, he will be on the court because his defense is undeniable, right? You know that he has the offensive talent, but the defense is undeniable, right? And that's what Nate Oates was looking for when he built this roster, was he needed people that could not only play offense but could also defend. And he definitely has that in both of these guys. I thought that what I saw out of both of them was absolutely incredible. But like I said, Mohamed Diabate needed the shout out, needed absolutely all the praise that he's going to get. The two guys that are probably going to be kind of on the outside looking in, if I had to point to people on the outside looking in for this roster, are probably going to be Nas Cunningham, which is kind of no surprise, and maybe Houston Millett. I've heard some rumors potentially even of a red shirt. I'm not sure as it relates to Chris Youngblood being out. That may change things, but Houston Millett and Nas Cunningham, personally, if I'm pointing out two players as of this very moment that it's harder for me to see minutes for, those are the two that are the hardest for me to see minutes for as we get down the stretch. Not to say that they would not play at all, because I definitely think that both of these guys have the ability to score and have the athleticism and ability to defend, right? They absolutely both do. I just think currently, as the roster makeup is, it's the hardest to find minutes for those two guys. Everyone else's minutes, kind of, I can see very clearly where you're going to play them, who's going to, if somebody's not defending as good, you put in somebody that's putting in more effort, right? Like, that stuff all makes sense to me. Those are the two guys that for me are the hardest to find the minutes for. So that's what I want to talk about with Alabama basketball. We will cover the Memphis scrimmage again next episode, and we will talk about it after it happens. I will, of course, give a full breakdown of UNC Asheville. I will also be doing the pregame threads on Twitter and on Substack that I did last season. So if you did enjoy those, please stay subscribed to the channel here or follow me over on Twitter or Substack, because all of that will be coming out for Alabama basketball this season. I'm going to do exactly what I did last season in terms of basketball. We're going to do pregame breakdowns and postgame breakdowns of all Alabama basketball games. So like I said, if you do enjoy the Alabama basketball content, please subscribe. It's not going anywhere. I will be at all of these, all of the home games and maybe some away games as well. So stay with me. I promise I will get these put out as soon as possible. So let's move over to the football game, where we saw Alabama lose to Tennessee for the second time in 3 seasons, and the second straight time in Knoxville. The story of this game is kind of twofold. It was Alabama's inability to take advantage of turnovers caused by the defense, and the inability of Jalen Milroe to be confident in himself and just complete the open pass, right? The issue in this game, the issue this season, has largely been our defense, right? When we talk about the issues with Alabama football, it has been our defense. We talked about the Vandy game, we talked about the South Carolina game, and about how the defense was not able to get off the field on third down, was not able to get off the field on fourth down, and it was really causing massive issues. And Alabama was just looking very, very bad. It was like no matter what the offense did, the defense was causing problems. Yet in this game, the defense wasn't your issue. The defense caused 3 turnovers. They forced a fumble and picked Nico off twice and really had him uncomfortable for large stretches of this game. The offense, however, could not convert. The offense went 3 of 14 on third down. Jalen Milroe goes 25 of 45 through the air, 5.3 yards per pass, has 2 interceptions, and just never looked comfortable. There was one drive the whole game that really felt confident and comfortable, and it was the next to last drive. It was the drive where Alabama ends up scoring at the end of the, believe it was at the end of the third quarter. That was really the only drive that Alabama had that I truly felt like Alabama was fully clicking on all cylinders and was fully confident. Alabama gets down 14-10 for the first time in the game, and then Alabama puts together a drive with a run and a pass, and we pass to Kendrick Law, and then we do a longer pass to Jeremy Bernard, and we actually, put together a semblance of offense. Justice Haynes runs it in untouched for a touchdown, and it looked like they might have found something on offense. And then immediately following that, Tennessee has a 9-play drive that leads to a punt. Alabama goes 3 and out with a punt. Tennessee scores, so Alabama's now down 3 and out in a punt, 4 and down on downs. Tennessee kicks a field goal, and then Jalen throws a pick on the first play to end the game. Right? So Alabama gets a drive to make it look like they know what they're doing. They get a drive to actually have some turnaround, to potentially be, oh, wow, Alabama may have put it together finally on offense. The blocking looked better. Alabama was running the ball better. They had more time for Milroe. The throw to Jeremy Bernard was perfect. It was like, oh, maybe Alabama knows what they're doing. Nope. 3 and out, 4 and out, interception. Tennessee made Milroe's life a living hell in this game. It was not an individual effort that we saw from South Carolina where you just had a single person that was just a wrecking crew. Tennessee just continued to bring pressure, and their defensive line continued to get to Jalen Milroe. And because that defensive line continued to get to Jalen Milroe, he was never confident. And it leads me to beg the question, are we sure Milroe is the guy? And the reason I ask this question is I partially am a Milroe believer in that if you give him time, he typically is better. Right? We saw it in the South Florida game. We saw it in the Wisconsin game. Right? South Florida game, he didn't look that good. You finally start giving him some time, he looks a lot better. In the Wisconsin game, pressure was never an issue. He looked really good. In the Georgia game, he did a really good job. Even when Georgia brought pressure, he was replacing the blitzer with the ball. He was looking fine. The problem in this game is he never set his feet. He never was confident in his pocket. He never was confident in his receivers. The only person he was targeting was Ryan Williams. Ryan Williams had almost 20 targets in this game. Of 45 attempts, 20 of them went to Ryan Williams. When we talked about the ability of Alabama's offense after that Georgia game, the thing we talked about was he had thrown it to 10 receivers. Right? Ryan Williams obviously was the guy who made the important catches. Right? He made 2 of the biggest catches, but he was not the only guy making catches. The problem was Milroe started only throwing to Ryan Williams. And Tennessee knew it. They were putting their best corner on Ryan. The pick in the end zone was Milroe staring down Ryan Williams. You're throwing a jump ball to a 6'1" receiver against one of the best corners, playing vision. It just doesn't make any sense, right? The clear statement of this is you have to throw it to somebody else, right? At the end of the day, DeBoer and Nick Sheridan both talked about this in some of the other games, about how you had to throw it to other people because if you only threw it to Ryan Williams, the defense was going to key in on him. Right? They said that after the Georgia game about how it was a real effort to make sure that you got other people involved in the passing game. Because if you only throw it to Ryan, they're going to key in on Ryan. And then in this Tennessee game, you did exactly what you said you couldn't do. You just keyed in on Ryan and only threw the ball to Ryan, and it was easy defense, right? When I know where the ball is going, I can scheme to avoid him, right? The other problem is Jalen Milroe was missing wide open passes. The play that possibly could get you a touchdown or at least get you massive yards at the end of the game, Jalen gets a clean pocket. Ryan Williams has nobody within 10, 15 yards of him outside of the safety that was not close, and Ryan only has the safety to beat for a touchdown, and Jalen overthrows him by 5 yards. He just was never, he didn't set his feet. He was throwing as if somebody was blitzing him and he had to get it out quick, and there was nobody nearby. Right? There was nobody nearby. Jalen just overthrows a wide open Ryan Williams, and then that's it, right? Ryan Williams, if he can't catch the ball, there's nothing we can do, right? So you were targeting him too much, honestly, in times where it was super tight coverage, yet when he was wide open, you couldn't get it to him because you were just overthrowing the ball. Then the other thing is Alabama may be the most undisciplined Alabama team that I have ever seen. Now, part of this is Alabama has struggled with penalties in Knoxville, right? The last 2 games, they have combined for 32 penalties in Knoxville. So there's something to be said about that, right? I don't know if it's the environment. I don't know if it's the refs getting a little trigger happy. I don't know what it is, right? And I'm not going to say these refs were perfect by any stretch of the imagination. I know there was a holding call that they missed on Ryan Williams. There was an offsides that was super obvious that would have given Alabama a first down that they missed, right? There were multiple things in this game that were missed. There were also a bunch of things that they called that were absolutely legitimate and that were no-brainers. Like one of them, the Kendrick Law personal foul that basically ends the game on 4th and 22. Kendrick Law, well, first off, Jalen throws the ball behind Kendrick. If he hits him in stride how he should have, Kendrick can actually catch the ball and run with it. But instead, he throws it behind Kendrick Law. Kendrick Law, bobbles it. Defender blows him up. He drops the ball. Then they get drawn with each other. Kendrick shoves him. The guy actually kind of throws a punch back. And instead of offsetting penalties, you get 1 penalty on Kendrick Law. Absolutely was a penalty on Law. I probably should have been offsetting, right? Similar to the penalty that we got called for illegal substitution, where somebody came off the field and then tried to come back on the field. Should have never been illegal substitution. DeBoer, the officials even were talking about how DeBoer should have had a right to substitute, and the officials did not give him time. That doesn't matter, right? The undisciplinedness of Alabama is very, very, very obvious, right? Alabama is now the 5th most penalized team in the entire country. They are averaging almost 9 penalties a game. They had over 150 penalty yards in this game, right? Alabama cannot do anything good without a penalty pulling it back, right? There were a few moments where Alabama thankfully had the penalties go in their favor, but again, they were just not able to capitalize, right? Penalty helps you get off the field on 4th down, get good field position. Your offense doesn't do anything, right? This is a situation where Alabama has got to figure out what they do best. They had some success running the ball, and they got away from running the ball. They had moderate success throwing it, and then Jalen just completely looks lost. The defense was looking terrible earlier in the season. Now they look okay. Alabama just does not have an identity currently. They don't. They don't have an identity. Their only identity is being undisciplined and super temperamental, right? They look great in the first half against Georgia, which now looks insane after the Georgia-Texas game. Then they look terrible in the second half. Right? Obviously, we've talked about how Georgia had a completely different game plan. They were going for it on 4th down. It was a way different circumstance. But still, nevertheless, it happened. Right? My thoughts is Alabama needs to figure out what they do best and just do that. Right? Start with the basics. Because currently, if you want any shot of trying to make a playoff, and as I'm recording this, the AP poll just came out. Alabama's ranked 15th. Right? Obviously, the AP poll is not the college football playoff poll, but this gives you an idea. Alabama's 15th. If you're going to be an at-large team in the college football playoff, you're going to need somewhere in the 7 to 9 range. Right? So Alabama's got some work to do. They still have a game upcoming against Missouri. They still have a game upcoming against LSU. They still have games upcoming against Oklahoma and Auburn. They still have some games. They will have to win out. No questions asked. You're going to have to win out if you're going to try to make it. The other thing is, if you even want to think about winning out, you've got to actually figure out what you do best and get back to doing that. Right? Because at the end of the day, it really felt like Alabama was just grasping at straws. You started the game and you have 8 runs in a row. Cool, you're establishing the run. But then you run it on 3rd down and have to punt. Right? It's the play calling in this game for me on offense was very bad. It's you were getting success doing one thing, and so you just kept doing it, and then Tennessee just keys in on what you're doing and they stop you. Right? Tennessee has a great defense. Not going to take that away from them. But the offense has to be better. I believed in Kalen DeBoer coming into this. I believed in Nick Sheridan mostly because of Kalen DeBoer. But the offensive play calling has got to be better. Right? If you're going to have success, you need to have consistent success. And consistent success is going to be making the play calls that will help you win the games. And I just didn't think I saw that. So I don't know what Alabama needs to do. I don't know if it's a change at quarterback. I don't know if it's a change across the offensive line. I don't know if it's keeping a tight end in a block to give Jalen Milroe extra time. I don't know what it is. I don't know exactly what it's going to take for Alabama to get back to playing the brand of football that we saw earlier this season. But if Alabama doesn't, this is going to be an 8-4 Alabama team. This is going to be a team that, has no chance of achieving any of their goals, has no chance of, thinking about a college football playoff, and might as well just pack it up and get ready for next season, right? They will fall and continue to fall if they do not figure out what's going on. And I don't know exactly what all this means. Obviously, I know Kalen DeBoer is trying to figure it out, but something has got to change. And I think that in the offseason, that's going to come from a coordinator perspective. I really don't know if the coordinators are the answer, but at a bare minimum, something must change for this team because as it's going right now, they are too undisciplined and too poorly coached and poorly game planned, and opponents are just taking full advantage. Tennessee took advantage. South Carolina took advantage. Vanderbilt took advantage. Georgia made adjustments and took advantage in the second half. DeBoer has just been getting out-coached. Now, Milroe cost him this Tennessee game, right? I don't think that this was a full just out-coaching. But in most cases, I do not think that DeBoer has lived up to the expectation that some of us had set because of the success he had with inferior teams at Washington. The comments were, look what he did with inferior competition at Washington, like against Georgia and against Texas. What's he going to do with better players at Alabama? The answer is worse, right? It's very odd. Obviously, these aren't his players. This isn't, the people he would have gotten for his scheme. But still, these are elite players, right? Alabama has the best talent composite of anybody in the country. And they've just underperformed. So they're gonna have to figure it out, and you're gonna have to figure it out fast because you have Missouri coming to town this week before an off week and going to Death Valley and Baton Rouge. So we will see what happens. But that's all I really have to say about Alabama football. Things have to change, and I'm not exactly sure what all that entails. But things have to change. They have to change in a hurry because this is really bad, and it could get even worse. So that's all I have to say. If you did enjoy the content, please consider subscribing. Thank you so much as always for watching, and I will catch you in the next episode. Peace.